Right now, there's a fascinating story unfolding. The ambition of a single state, Indiana, is plugging right into this massive national conversation about industry, security, and really the future of American power. And this isn't about just reopening a few old factories, it's about a fundamental shift in strategy for an entire nation.
In this quote, wow, it just gets right to the heart of it. In a world where supply chains are getting shaky and geopolitical tensions are on the rise, the ability to actually build things at home, well, it's not just a nice idea anymore. It's about national survival.
You know, to really understand where we're going with this, we actually have to look back. That term, arsenal of democracy, it was coined by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was describing America's incredible role in arming the Allies during World War II. And now that same idea is being dusted off and revived for a totally different century.
And for Indiana, believe it or not, this is pretty familiar territory. During World War II, Indianapolis was an absolute powerhouse. It was a critical hub in that original arsenal, just churning out everything from aircraft engines to all kinds of military gear.
So the big question is, if America was this industrial giant, what happened? Why did that arsenal go quiet? Well, the answer lies in what you could call a production gap that opened up over the last several decades, thanks to globalization and, shifting economic priorities. This chart tells a really dramatic story. Back in the 1950s, manufacturing made up nearly a third of the entire U.S. economy. Think about that. Today, it's just a little over 10%. That is a seismic shift, and it represents decades of deindustrialization and sending jobs overseas.
So where did all that capacity go? Well, while the U.S. share of global manufacturing was falling, China's just skyrocketed. It went from being a tiny fraction of the world's total output to nearly a third. And that's the global landscape any effort to reindustrialize has to face today.
Okay, so against that massive global backdrop, how can just one state even start to compete? Indiana's answer is a very specific and, I gotta say, very ambitious bet. Instead of trying to do everything, it's aiming to dominate a single critical technology of the future: drones.
And this is a concrete plan, not just talk. Governor Mike Braun made it official with this executive order, kicking the whole thing off. This initiative, which was developed with Senator Todd Young, aims to make Indiana a national leader in drone research, manufacturing, and security.
So, what does this task force actually do? Well, it has a really clear set of goals. They're creating a special aerial test corridor between major research centers, boosting drone use for first responders, building up a local supply chain, and, this is crucial, developing the workforce to make it all happen.
And the prize they're all chasing? It is huge. The North American drone market is projected to be worth nearly $60 billion by the end of the decade. So, here's the key. This is both a national security strategy and a massive economic play.
But look, drones are just one piece of a much larger puzzle here. This entire plan is only credible because it builds on a deep, pre-existing defense ecosystem that's already humming along within the state.
So while the drone initiative is getting all the headlines, something just as important is happening on the ground. The state recently broke ground on a massive new munitions campus. We're talking everything from artillery shells to advanced energetics, all designed to address critical shortages and really strengthen the U.S. defense industrial base.
And it's backed by serious money. A $175 million private investment from Prometheus Energetics is launching this facility right next to the Naval Surface Warfare Center at Crane, which is already a huge strategic asset for the state.
Of course, an arsenal needs an army of skilled workers, right? And Indiana already has one. More than 60,000 people in the state are already employed in the defense sector, which creates this deep well of talent to draw from.
So you see, these new investments aren't some wild gamble. They're building on a massive $6.5 billion economic foundation that's already in place.
And behind all this manufacturing muscle is some serious brain power. The Indiana Research Consortium brings together the state's top universities, Purdue, Notre Dame, and IU, to spearhead R&D in these supercritical fields. We're talking hypersonics, the science of ultra-fast flight, secure microelectronics, the tiny chips that power everything, and energetics, the very stuff that makes munitions go boom. This is the innovation engine.
This quote from the CEO of one of the groups behind that new munitions campus, it absolutely nails the central problem that Indiana's entire strategy is trying to solve. America has always been great at inventing the future. The challenge is being able to build it.
So this brings us to the big question. What's happening in Indiana is fascinating for sure. But can it serve as a model for the rest of the country? Is this a blueprint for reactivating America's industrial base on a truly national scale?
Well, some experts are proposing a national strategy that looks a lot like what Indiana is already doing. First, you'd audit the nation's industrial assets, literally map out all the forgotten factories and capabilities. Then, you create a multi-billion-dollar fund to reactivate the most promising plants. This would be coordinated through regional partnerships, just like Indiana's. And, critically, it would involve cutting the red tape that can stall these kinds of strategic projects for years.
So that's the story of how one state is trying to turn the lights back on in America's factories. It's a plan built on a legacy of production, focused on future tech, and backed by a deep ecosystem of industry and research. But this all leads to the ultimate challenge. Reactivating a dormant industrial inheritance is one thing, but will it be enough to build the arsenal of the future?